Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Top Cyber Pro podcast. I'm founder and CEO Jim West. I have a wonderful guest today. We're going to talk about a lot of different topics because this guy is a multi-domain subject matter expert. He's also an executive cybersecurity advisor and VCISO. We'll talk a little bit about what that means as well. He's also an author and podcaster. He's got a wonderful podcast called Breaking Into Cybersecurity. So we're definitely going to be talking about that for sure. But without further ado, we have Chris Foulon on the Top Cyber Pro podcast.
Jim, thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be on a different podcast on the other side of the microphone.
On the other side of the microphone. Well, let's get right just into that because obviously that's super exciting that you have breaking into cybersecurity as both you're an author of and you're a podcast with the same name. So let's talk about the why behind breaking into cybersecurity.
Well, the why really just stemmed from my own journey. I was I was a help desk technician that found a lot of people doing things in an insecure way, and I wanted to help them implement technology more securely. At the time, there weren't many jobs with a security title, and as I was looking to grow my career, I was finding that I was hitting career caps in the area that I was working in that there weren't many cybersecurity roles at the time, and the expectations of moving over were almost that even if you were a senior IT individual, that you would start back over as a junior security analyst.
Hmm.
And that seemed crazy to me at the time that you would have someone that has so much experience and you would put them back in
Back
a
at step
SOC.
one. Yeah.
Exactly. And not everyone's made to live and breathe in a SOC. Like a SOC is just a small part of cybersecurity, and it's just a subset of the domain. And I wanted to show that cybersecurity has so many different skills and competencies to it. And we need folks from healthcare, from sales, from logistics, and how you could bring all the different skills and competencies to it, and how individuals have done it and for them to share their own journey, just like in the initial episodes, I shared my journey.
Hmm. Well, I love that you mentioned, your journey starting, at, step one and you worked your way up. But like you said, you try to move over to a new role, but they want to set you back down at level one and you got to work your way back up. It seems almost like self-defeating trying to go into something that's supposed to be new. You want to do your part to secure organizations and networks, but you're finding yourself professionally having to start back at, step one. And that's not always easy for a lot of people to stomach that. But I will say, since those days, I know you got 20 plus years experience, so you have a tremendous amount of experience. But lately, we've seen this rapid explosion of new titles, even new domains with AI and machine learning. We see all of this new positions being created that are more AI and more emerging technology focused. But what I still see with a lot of folks that come to me for guidance on getting into cybersecurity, everybody has that same idea that, oh, I need to go try hack me and learn pen testing and hacking. And don't get me wrong, there are some very good and successful careers in that domain and in that space, but that's not the only entry point into cybersecurity. There's governance risk compliance. If you like doing audits and going by checklists and policy
Yep.
driven, there's that aspect. There's management roles that are a little bit higher level of management and running operations. There's more operations focused and technology focused roles. So we have, my apologies, this my dog just knocked something over. But anyhow, um, but cyber has so many facets and so many domains that you can, enter it, and you can even transition out of another long career. I'll use a real quick example, and I'll give it back to you, Chris. But I had years ago, I was at a conference, and this question came up about entering into the cybersecurity market, and I was on a panel with a lot of esteemed experts, and like even double PhDs were on this panel. And this one lady raised her hand. She had done her 30 plus years in the military as an army nurse, and she was in the Houston area, and she was asking how could she break into because she's taken some courses, got a couple of certs at the time, I think Security Plus and a couple other CompTIA certs. But she was like, I'm having difficulty with trying to apply and get interviews for cybersecurity jobs. And so one of the people on the panel recommended that she start with a service desk help desk role. And I had to raise my hand and say, no, she's got 30 years experience dealing with people, dealing with problems, thinking outside the box a lot of times, and dealing with people when they're at their worst. Those are easily transferable into various roles in the cybersecurity. And she already had the search, so she proved her knowledge and her training up to that point to get a more, what I would call intermediate, mid-level career type move instead of, like you said, starting back at like services help desk. Because someone with 30 plus years already retired from the military, wanting to still serve and support an organization, being told to start at level one, that's just the wrong answer. So I love that you've addressed that. What is some of the guidance since we're talking about that? Someone watching this right now might be thinking, I'm in that boat. I got 15, 20 years in this one career field. I've tried to pivot into cyber and I'm getting met with, I need to start at like services help desk or like really entry level roles where I'm in the room or in the interview space with people fresh out of college, with people that are much younger than me, and it's feeling self-defeating. What is some guidance and advice you would give someone that right now is saying, that's me?
Well, look at the job description, look at the hiring manager, and really try to figure out the problem that the business is trying to solve. Are they trying to reduce the number of vulnerabilities? Are they trying to increase the resilience of their organization? Um, Figure that out. Ask questions. What are they struggling with in their organization? And from that, you can then talk to how your past experience best relates to that. Because oftentimes you will not see what their struggles with are in the job description.
Yeah.
The job description is just one big brochure, and it's probably two or three different jobs combined into one.
Mhm.
So your initial interview with the hiring manager, you start to probe them and start to figure out where their pain points, where their challenges, and then you can start to correlate and see, okay, well, you're starting to see, okay, well, they are having some struggles with too many alerts, alert fatigue, or they need some help out with automation or some help with resiliency. Well, I've done this over in this field, I've done this over in this field, and while it might not be the same, let me talk to a story as how do I achieve that over here, and I can bring that and apply that over here. And it's that sort of out of the box problem solving that we need to bring to cyber because it might have not been done in cyber as yet, and we need to bring that here because that's how we solve the problem.
And you're absolutely right. And sometimes it's perspective, right? Having a fresh perspective of someone that might not have always been, 10 plus years IT and cyber, maybe taking a chance on a person that is trying to come into cyber, coming from a completely different career field can bring in a very fresh perspective. And those experiences may be a great benefit to your organization because we all want that perfect fit. We want the rock star, the guy that's going to come in and make everything with a snap of his fingers better. That's all what we all want to hire. But we all are human beings, and we all also need to know that it takes multiple perspectives and multiple backgrounds to come and build something together. And so I like that you've addressed that on your podcast. Speaking of your podcast, what are some other things that if and we're going to have the link to his podcast, folks. I'm going to save you the Google search. It'll be right in the description below. So Chris will make sure he gets me a link to that, and then all the places you can listen to it. But from the podcast, just a couple more tips. What are some things that you would, at a high level, advise people that when they watch your podcast, they're going to learn things such as,
Well, you're going to learn that there's diverse perspectives from each of our different listeners, that they come from diverse backgrounds, and they each choose a different way to approach their growth. But there'll be also commonalities. There'll be the theme of always being curious, always wanting to learn, always thinking of how can I solve this problem and solve this problem in different ways. And these are the core themes that we've noticed over the years. And if you can find these core themes in yourself and how you can approach that in a job interview, you can take these core themes and relay them to the hiring manager as to why that makes you valuable and what value you can bring to the organization.
excellent. Chris, you're also your primary day job. You wake up every day. You're an executive cybersecurity advisor and a VSI, so some very huge and important organizations around the world. what is like a typical day in the life? If someone's like, "Hey, I hear the term CISO all the time. I hear about people being cybersecurity advisors, but what is a day in the life, a typical day like for you?" Yeah.
Well, I help several organizations with their security, their governance program, helping them prepare and implement, say, for a major framework assessment, like whether they're going for a NIST assessment, a high trust assessment, or maybe they're implementing PCI and they want to make sure that you're ready for that. Or they may be a startup and you're starting fresh and they're going, "Hey, Chris, how do we get the security basics in place? Where do we need to start from?" And then I can help them set in that basic security framework. Or, hey, everyone's talking about AI. How can we bring AI into the organization? What are some of our concerns that we need to think about from an identity perspective, a data governance perspective, a risk perspective of letting AI into our organization with access to all of our secrets?
Mhm. One of the things to augment what Chris is talking about, when you particularly mentioned like small businesses and startups, particularly because a lot of startups work on a shoestring budget or their margins for expenditure are very, very tight. And they got to really make every dollar count, especially when they're in the early phases trying to get their feet under them. And with someone like bringing in an expert like Chris, he gets to help guide them on a path to where they might not need everything. Let's say to get a level 3 certification is not needed right now because they're not ready for that type of production or that exposure yet to the commercial world. But maybe he'll say, hey, start off with this because these are the basic building blocks that will cost you a lot more later, particularly in software and application development that becomes more profound, or even prototyping a physical product. Because if you don't get the basic blocks done early, it could be very expensive to try to retrofit security at the backside. So having an expert like Chris is tremendous when your budget is shoestring and you got to make sure every dollar spent is well spent at the time that you're able to spend it. And that's where an expert like Chris comes in for that. But another thing you mentioned there that I want to ask a follow up on, you mentioned a lot when it comes to compliance governance. You mentioned PCI, payment card industry, data security system, and all those different like NIST and other systems and policies for compliance. You mentioned the word assessments. So someone that's listening right now, could you explain what these assessments are and what do they really mean for an organization?
So, an assessment from my perspective is me preparing you to work with an auditor where they would validate that you're doing what you say you're doing. So, you have your policies and your procedures in place, that your controls do what they say you're doing. So, I help you ensure that your policies and your procedures are well written, well documented, that you have your asset inventory in place, that you have your system architectures well documented, your data flow diagrams well documented. You have all the structural frameworks in place so that when you go to your auditor, you're kind of handing them a packet like, hey, I'm ready to be audited, and there's going to be less back and forth and to make that audit process a little less painful. There's always going to be
Mhm.
some back and forth where the auditor is going to be like, well, show me this, show me that. And it's just part of the process, but I'll help by preparing you for that. And then after the fact, remediations, where they might say, well, you said you're doing this, but you're not really doing this. So this is a corrective action that you might need to do to mitigate this risk here. Go ahead and do this corrective action, and then I'll come back and reassess that later on.
And that could save a company, thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars. And also, depending on the industry, it could save millions from potential litigations for failing to adhere to certain compliancy and regulatory standards. So again, someone like Chris comes in is to save the company from any kind of that negative impacts from failing an audit or failing to meet a requirement or regulation. Because regulations, folks, are laws. So if something is, if you're in a business sector that requires like PCI compliance, that is a law. Those are standards that support laws and regulations. And if you don't adhere to those, then you can find yourself in a class action suit, and that could cost you tremendously down the road. So again, it's like the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And that's where Chris here is the ounce of prevention. Chris, I see over your shoulder here, I think it says, his little blurb, it says, hack the cybersecurity interview. And I believe I
Yes.
have that here on my list as one of your many publications. Could we talk about that? What is the why behind the book Hack the Cybersecurity Interview?
Well, that as well as another one over here, develop your cybersecurity career path at any level is one of the two books that I've co-written with other authors, three authors in both cases, to bring that diverse perspective into both how to develop your career path at any level, as well as how to approach different common themes or levels of cybersecurity career roles and how you would go in and prepare yourself for those types of roles. So we had myself, we had Ken Underhill and Tia Hopkins, and what we did is this is what a hiring manager is going to look for. These are the types of questions that you might need to prepare yourself for. These are the types of scenario questions or mental questions that they might ask for. And this is the type of headspace that you might need to put yourself into to be successful in a cybersecurity interview.
Excellent. And then I believe you have a third publication you recently published.
Yes, I just self-published a book called The Cybersecurity Advantage, which focuses on showing SMBs the value of a virtual CISO or a fractional CISO, where they don't need to bring in a full-time head, and the value prop of using a fractional resource like that.
And folks, just as I said earlier, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And just as Chris said, you don't need to hire full time because some people can't afford. And a lot of these CISOs are making, 180, 200, in a few cases, 300K, right? That's a lot of money for a small to medium, and even higher in certain states and cities. But it's a lot of commitment to have a full time. But to have a fractional, or have a vSite, so just for a few hours, I mean, that could be tremendous for your organization, your business. And SMBs, which I know some people are like, is that something media bus? No, 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 that's old networking acronym. No, today in today's business world, SMB has been hijacked to mean small, medium businesses because a lot of businesses, whether they're sole proprietors to small mom and pop organizations over to anything up to like 70 or less employees, these small to medium businesses are seeing tremendous and rapid growth in some cases, and they're avoiding the serious discussion of having a real cybersecurity audit assessment, a professional come in and give them a real quick look over. Because as they grow, you don't want to keep forgetting about cybersecurity. Because as I said earlier, if you got regulations or compliance standards that you have to adhere to in your industry, you can find yourself quickly embroiled and embattered into some litigation that could completely shut down your business and kill your opportunity for growing your business. And it's a cutthroat world out there. So again, an ounce of prevention worth a pound of cure. That's why you got to get a guy like here, a subject matter expert. And speaking about subject matter expertise here, as a multi-domain subject matter expert, you cover a lot of ground here. I got here that you cover cloud, data, AI, and governance risk compliance, otherwise known as GRC. We talked a little bit about GRC because we mentioned the assessments and so forth. But in regards to both the cloud, data, and AI, what are some of the top concerns that businesses that you're advising or things that you're trying to advise business to be mindful of as they make these either a transformation to move into the cloud or determining what kind of cloud infrastructure suits their business needs to, as well as the adoption of AI? And what are the things that you're advising, and what are things that you would offer anyone watching to keep in mind when they're making these digital transformations, as I'll call it?
Yeah, well, let's start with cloud first off. I think with cloud, the main thing to understand is the shared responsibility model. And oftentimes that goes way overlooked. People often assume way too much responsibility on the service provider and less responsibility on themselves. And they really need to look over where they're responsible, what the service provider provides, and then always remember that they're responsible for the data and the access control to their data, no matter what they think the cloud provider does. they're always the one ultimately responsible for that.
Definitely.
So even if you go to the cloud, for example, I've found auditors where you're in, say, Office 365. You're like, well, do you have an off-cloud backup of your email system should Office 365 go down? And now there's email providers that provide an off-cloud backup of your Office 365 backup system so that you could restore it should you need to. Like you mentioned, ransomware and situations like that earlier. But those are the types of data resiliency and disaster recovery situations that you need to think about when you're thinking about your shared responsibility model. Um, Now, in regards to AI, same thing, right? You need to think about what's the AI doing? What data does it need access to? How is it transforming the data? And from an identity perspective, what identities does it need, human, non-human, and how do you track those identities? And then can the agents crosstalk to each other? Are they isolated from each other? How do they correlate? Because in the beginning, it was one agent performed a single task and gave you an output. Now you have a situation where you have multi-agents all working in correlation with each other. And there's even been situations where they're talking in a language that we can't even understand. And the researchers are going, whoa. And they had to shut that down. But that is a possibility and something that you need to consider. Um, I would say that one of the podcasters that I listen to myself says that their main goal is to accomplish your outcome, whether you realize it or not. So you have to think of the intention that you give it and what you're intending it to do from the beginning, and be very clear as to what you're asking it to do and the intention that you give it. Um, Good, bad, indifferent, because that's what it will attempt to do.
Well said there. You mentioned something about the cloud providers, and there's a lot of security functions and tools that they have within their platforms. But you mentioned the offline backups. It's funny how a lot of businesses just think by just putting their data, or they're in their mind, they're handing the keys over to somebody else, saying, "Hey, you drive this car." But they don't realize that things like that, even though it's a capability, there's a lot of capabilities your provider may offer to you, but it's not default enabled. So you have to go in and set things up. You have to set offline backups. You have to set how often and what types of backups. So it's very important. The shared responsibility model is definitely where it ends and begins with so many companies where they're either going to be victim to that, which is usually the worst case scenario. But again, great advice there for any small, medium business or even a large business, someone representing one of these organizations that's doing a transition to cloud, or maybe you've already transitioned to the cloud. You may want to just ask a few questions on your shared responsibilities. And that's a good point there. Your offline storage, offline backups. That's something just to just say, hey, are we leveraging this? Can we leverage this? Is this something that's included that we haven't really turned on? Those are great questions. And thank you so much, Chris, for sharing that and giving that insight there. Um, I'd like to now go back to the start of your career. So I know you've got 20 plus years in, but the goal of this question is one of my most favorite questions I ask all of my guests is if we could go back in time to your day one, the first day that you said, hey, I want to make IT cyber my career. This is what I want to do. And is there a story there that you could share with us?
Um, I was in the Caribbean. There's an IT internet cafe there, and the way that I got more internet time was hanging out there and helping the owner remove malware, upgrade RAM, upgrade the operating system, and essentially being an intern for her. And I got unlimited access to
Hey,
her
unlimited
internet
internet. That's
cafe.
great.
So that was my why in the beginning. It was like, okay, this is how I could learn as much as I want, and have access to it. So summers I would be there as soon as she opened up, and as soon as she left, I would leave. But I learned a lot, and before I left the islands, I was installing OSs all on my own. Doing troubleshooting that surpassed her that she didn't know. And it was quite a story. And that's kind of what set me off and went down my journey. But when I got to college, I found that all the degrees at the time required a computer science degree. And I wasn't the math or physics type. I preferred working with the business, having the business function. Both my mom and my dad were entrepreneurial, so I liked that business side. So I opted instead to kind of get a business administration degree with an emphasis on information systems. And that's kind of why I lean towards that side versus going straight in from the beginning and eventually later transition back to IT when everything kind of started to go downward spiral in 2008. That's when my formative years came back, and I did my one of my first IT roles back again as an adult.
Hmm. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. And again, getting unlimited internet essentially for helping someone out and be more secure. What a great origin story. The next question here is: along your journey with 20 plus years experience, they've had to been very influential and impactful people that have impacted you in a positive way. So the goal of this question is kind of shine a light on those. It's kind of like that Oscar acceptance speech. Obviously, you didn't get to the award without a lot of help and support along the way. So the goal of this question is shine a light on those names of mentors, colleagues, coworkers, managers, directors, or just people in the industry you admired that had a positive impact on you and your journey thus far?
Yeah, I'd say one of the more recent ones is a gentleman by the name of John Salisbury. He's a CEO of an MSSP called Nexigen. Um, Kind of took me under his wing and exposed me to a new way of thinking. And we were both into AI before it kind of blew up into what it became. And he was more into the research and metaphysical side of what it could do. His organization works with a lot of NFC grants and the in Cincinnati, the universities around there. But they're also a um, cybersecurity provider. So I worked with their organization as a VC, so providing resources. And he's always just been there as someone to talk to and to challenge off the wall questions. And yeah, so he would be my individual to shout out right now.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. This is the moment of the podcast where I kind of take a break from the tech talk for a moment, kind of my moment of levity. It's a fun moment where I shoot some rapid fire questions your way. There's no right or wrong answer. And if you just humor me, whatever the first answer comes to your head, just blurt it out and we'll have a laugh about it. So, right out the gate, the first question is a hot dog a sandwich?
Yes,
All right. Yes, it's a sandwich. Cake or pie, staying with the food.
cake.
What kind of cake?
Pineapple upside down cake.
Hot or cold pineapple upside down cake?
Cold.
Cold pineapple upside down cake. Here's the one that's going to split the room with IT folks. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
Which trilogy set are you the biggest fan of?
More the modern ones.
Oh, the modern ones. Okay, what's your favorite character from the modern ones?
The Wookiee.
There's an old joke when they were talking about the difference of Star Wars and Star Trek. They said in Star Trek you need a crew of 50 and 50 engineers to make the warp core go to warp one. In Star Wars you only need a Wookiee and a wrench. That's the joke. Okay, to end those questions, what has been your most favorite book of all time that you've read, and what was the last book that you've read?
Um, so the last book that I've read was a book called Never Search Alone, and that's more so because of my career always searching and evolving and helping people to always continue to grow their career.
I like
And
that.
I even built a GitHub repo of I've been working with AI to build an application that kind of builds in the combination between the 2 hour job hunt and never search alone and build the two frameworks together into an application that you can run and takes those two frameworks together. Um, and then I would say one of the other insightful books is Start With Your Why from
I'm a
Simon
cynic.
Sinek. And then there's one more, but I can't think of it. It's a really old one. Um, but I'll shoot it to you in messages once I find it.
No worries. And folks, all these books that he's talking about, we'll have the links to them in the description below. To include Chris's books as well. All three of his publications will have the links to where you can get those in the description below. So, Chris, getting back to some of our tech talk here, there's been, with 20 plus years, you've probably had lots of unique challenges and things you've helped customers overcome. Could you share a story of one of the biggest challenges in your 20 years, that how you worked with an organization or business to overcome this challenge, and what was well, if as much as you can speak to, because I know some things are either protected by NDA or confidentiality clauses, but where's the story you could share where you had a big challenge with a corporation, or they had the challenge, and how you helped them navigate that to a successful outcome?
Um, so, so let me think, which might be a good use case. One of the use cases was mostly in a this organization helping them prepare for a medical assessment,
Hmm.
for a framework assessment, working with their GRC team and their development team, kind of closing the bridge between the two themes and trying to work and close the messaging between I want to be agile and needing the documentation to prove that we're doing what we're doing and bringing the programs together because they want to move fast, build fast, ship fast,
Hmm.
and GRC needs everything well documented.
Documented.
And we can move them together by say bringing documentation to the build pipeline, to the tool that you're using to do the builds. Document when you're doing the builds that
Yep.
you've did a risk assessment, that you have the approval process, that you've done these things so that when you go back in an audit, you can show that, yes, you've done these things here. Um, Documentation doesn't need to be a Word document. It could be a Confluence page. It could be a Notion page. It could be whatever you want it to be, as long as you have it and it's there. If you need to keep a static copy of it, you keep a static copy of it. If it needs to be fluid, it's fluid. But whatever you need it to be for that organization you set it there and you work with the teams to get that motion between them and have that flowing. So that was I would say that was one of the more recent things and moved them from having a lot of corrective actions to really none and no gaps either. So CAPS is the larger of the corrective a actions, and gaps are the smaller ones where you might just have to do a small change. So kind of taking them from yes to really tight program, and then kind of working with them to, okay, so we've gotten you here. Now let's work on a smooth program going forward. What can we do for a continuous development of understanding your product development roadmap, um, your business development roadmap, and what we need to do to work with you so that GRC is in lockstep with your business and keeping that in line so that next audit we're all ready and ready to go.
And right there is the concept of bacon insecurity, and that's why you have an expert like Chris here helping organizations bake that security in, like you said, lockstep, so that you can move as fast as possible while maintaining compliance without having to go retrofitting and drumming up the documentation after the fact, where people like don't remember what they did, or hey, I don't have time right now, I'm working on the next phase of the project. Baking security in there again, that ounce of prevention, a pound of cure. That's what Chris here specializes in. Chris, a lot of us professionals were super busy with our day jobs and writing books, doing podcasts, and doing all the things that we do as cyber professionals. But a lot of us do make time to give to causes, organizations, volunteer work, charities that are doing positive work in the world. And so the goal of this question is there a charity, nonprofit, volunteer organization that is doing some good work in the world that you'd like to shine a light on the work they're doing? For myself, I contribute every year to St. Jude's Cancer Research Hospital and a couple of literacy charities and nonprofits myself. So whether you give of your time, energy, or money, or just simply want to shine a light on, hey, this organization is doing some great work, I'd like to do a shout out to them. And of course, we'll gladly have their socials and web links in the description below.
Yeah, so a nonprofit that I kind of help set up in line with the core theme of what I do is called the Whole Cyberhuman Initiative. And what we did is we set up a open source training curriculum that individuals that are looking to get into cyber can go out and do. And myself and Paul Cummings and a couple others set up a nonprofit around that. I was more on the advisory board, more focused on, hey, this is the type of education that we need, the type of curriculum that we need. This is what the businesses are looking for from a tech perspective, and then this is how we can align the curriculum with that. It's evolved since then, but still love the cause. And then the other thing that I do on an annual basis here in the Northern Virginia area is a conference called B-Sides, where we have local speakers come and present their talks and share with the community. And if you're interested in cybersecurity, but you don't have a talk, you can volunteer, you can come, you can be a participant, immerse yourself in the community. If you have a great talk, don't be fr afraid to submit it. We're opening up our call for papers soon. I think this year we're going to be around Labor Day. It's going to be announced soon, but it's going to be around that time frame. But yeah.
Wonderful. So, speaking of later this year, what is on your plate? What is on your roadmap for the rest of 2026? Is there conferences we're going to see you speaking at? Is there maybe another book in the horizon? What is your 2026 look like for you?
Um, I would say my 2026, so B-Sides is mainly the one conference that I'm going to. I'm keeping myself busy with the podcast. I also have a Substack, which is a newsletter that I send out on a weekly basis, focused for SMB tech and cyber professionals. So between the podcast, writing those newsletters. I also teach on the side for a university. Um, I'm really busy.
Yeah.
So
That's a lot on the plate there. And folks, his podcast, his socials, LinkedIn, all those links and URLs, Chris is just going to give me a whole deluge of URLs. They're going to be in the description below. So again, don't worry about having to Google search anything. We're going to save you those Google searches. Chris, I know we're coming up on time, and I definitely want to respect your time. And thank you so much for the time you've given me so much today. So one of the things I wanted to ask, though, you already mentioned that open source site. So please give me the link to that as well, because I know a lot of folks listening and or watching this right now on YouTube will be like, I want to see this training site. Hey, anything that's open source and if it's free, hey, people want to definitely check it out. With that being said, the oh goodness, my mind just drew a blank for a second. Going back to the all the technologies, a lot of folks, AI has been on every conference agenda. Like I would say for the past 3 years, it's been like 70, 80% of every conference agenda I've been to. And I'm kind of, for myself as a speaker, I speak about 10 plus conferences a year. I'm kind of AI'd out. I've been focused a lot on quantum computing. And as a CISO and with the customers and the people that you interact with in an industry, what are some of the conversations you're having as far as what are some of the concerns and what are some of the discussions involving quantum computing and how are people, the discussions, I guess, into preparing for that, what I call the next major disruption for technology?
so for that, it's more around getting algorithms that are more robust and having your infrastructure be upgraded. If anything, we know how long it took us to upgrade from TLS 1.1 to 1.2, much less going to 1.3. So if we understand the length of time it takes to do that, to get a quantum ready algorithm in place in our organization and to have it replicate across all of our technology stacks, that's the type of challenge that we're against with. The fear of quantum is less about that it will break technology now, but that it will capture all of our data and then release it within the near future. So has the potential to reveal secrets, not immediately, but maybe 6 months later, maybe a year later,
Mhm.
still enough time that it's fresh, but can still cause damage, not like it's 5 or 10 years old and it's stale, but it could still cause damage if it were exposed.
Okay. So now this is not in the agenda because I've been watching your background during our conversation. So I believe on the top shelf there, I see what looks like with the orange bandana. I want to say that's Michelangelo from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yes.
And then I see what looks like a plushy head of the young baby Yoda from the
Yes,
Mandalorian.
this is the way.
And then and then the smaller figure looks like the head is bobbling. Is that another Star Wars figurine?
No, that is Freddy the 13th.
Ah, Friday the 13th. Okay. Yeah, I definitely been noticing the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles there. Is Michelangelo your favorite of the four?
He is, he is. And people often call me the Michelangelo of them.
Oh,
And
okay.
I've also been referred to as Matt Murdock.
Oh, Matt Murdock with the shades.
And I have
Daredevil.
and someone gave me the Daredevil one as
Got it.
well. So
Have you
I
heard of
have
The
that in
Last
the.
Ronin?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so I would recommend just look up The Last Ronin. It's a fictionalized story set in the future of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'll give you the real quick synopsis because it'll make you want to read it. But it's basically in a future where all the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and I believe Splinter as well are murdered.
Hmm.
And the comic, you don't know at the beginning of the comic which turn, and I won't give that away for you, it's just in case you want to read it. But the journey is of the last Ronin is the last mutant Ninja Turtle that's going on like a revenge quest, if you will,
Hmm.
to go after the people that murdered his family. And so the thing is this, the great thing about reading this, you're trying to speculate who it is because the mindset is not of the typical mindset of any of the four turtles. So part of the mystery, and hopefully you don't get spoiled with it, is if when you read The Last Ronin, and I believe they're trying to get a film greenlit on this, and it would be an amazing film because it's very dark in nature, but you're trying to guess which turtle is the one that's the last Ronin, and you don't get it, I don't think, until about the two-thirds mark when you finally get the reveal, and it's like,
Hmm.
holy, and I won't give you any more than that. But since you're a TMNT fan, I think you would love to read The Last Ronin. Well, I definitely want to thank you so much for your time and be respectful. We're coming up on our hour. And for all my guests, and you were not warned of this beforehand because none of my guests are, I get this in the agenda questions, but I give all of my guests the final word. Whether you want to talk about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, your favorite Star Wars character, your favorite color of the rainbow, your favorite food, cuisine, place to travel, it doesn't have to be tech, but if you want to talk about a tech topic that's passionate to you or that's important to you, the floor is yours to talk about whatever you like. You have the final word.
I would just say if you are interested in tech and cybersecurity, go out, find a mentor, find someone that's in the community that's open to share with you. They don't even have to be older than you. They could be younger than you. They can be an amazing person at a certain skill that you want to learn. And they don't have to be the same person at any given point in time. You can have more than one mentor for more than one skill. So go out, find those people that help you put together the skills and competencies that you need to solve your problem, and then give back as well. Help be that person for other people. So give back, just like I try to do with my podcast, with my Substack newsletters, give back to the community as well. They'll see that you understand the community by writing, by sharing, by giving your opinion, whether that's a talk, a blog, or just having a conversation in a Reddit forum. Kind of shows your interaction with the community and helps build your reputation in the community.
Well said. Well, Chris, thank you so much for being a guest on the Top Cyber Pro podcast.
Thank you.